So it turns out that the media is 100% going out of business. The mainstream media, that is, they are lying through their teeth. They're saying that RFK Jr. is polarizing and that he's bad for America because he's trying to make America healthy again. That's the most bonkers and bananas thing that I'm probably going to hear all week. And we're about to see Jake Paul get murdered in the ring later today by Mike Tyson. So we're going to be talking about that later on today, as well as Freeland commenting on some of the border issues with, what's going to happen and what Canada can expect from Donald Trump. But first and most importantly, we're going to be taking a look at this Canada Post strike that's about to happen in Canada, like 2 weeks before Black Friday, right before Christmas, like the worst timing in the world, and the government's response to that. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage you all to smash the like button and subscribe if you haven't yet already. It does really help grow the channel. We are super close to like 427 or 428,000 subscribers. It'd be super awesome if we got there before the end of the month. And I do want to mention that if you want a matchy sticker like the one here on my microphone, you can find the link for that down below in the description or the pinned comment below. Use code SUNSHINE for 15% off, and you get this awesome sticker pack, and we give you matchy with the Keep Calm and Never Vote Liberal. But I mean, this one is probably my favorite. The only scams right there with the Liberal logo in it. So without further ado, let's just get into it. We're going to start off with the polls. We haven't done that in a hot minute here. Pierre of the Conservative Party sitting at 215 projected seats with a bottom line of 188, top end of 241. That's looking pretty good. He still only needs 172 for a majority government, so that's looking very good. And then Justin Trudeau and the Liberals are at 64 projected seats, but I do expect that since Parliament is resuming on Monday, you're going to start to see them come down into the lower 60s, into the mid 50s, because let's be honest, every time he opens his mouth in debates in Parliament, he just gets absolutely destroyed. Like Pierre Poilievre is coming with a vengeance this upcoming week, especially since there's only like 3 or 4 weeks of actual time back in Parliament before they take a hike for like 2 months for the Christmas holidays. Must be nice, to be a politician. Then you got the Bloc at 44 projected seats, 18 projected seats for Jagmeet, or does that say 18? I got to zoom in here, not to be condescending, but because my eyes are bad. 18 projected seats, maybe a little condescendingness happening. Conservatives, 99% likely across the board for winning the most seats and odds of a majority government. So things are still looking pretty good right there. What's not looking good, though, is the perfect segue into this Canada Post nationwide strike. So let's take a look at this video and highlight some of the key issues.
A work stoppage this morning impacting Canadians right across the country. Postal workers have gone on strike after the union and Canada Post failed to reach a deal before midnight.
55,000 strong members are working out of the work floor across the country. And this is because Canada Post has refused to negotiate in good faith.
The Canadian Union of Postal Workers says there was little progress on fair wages and safer working conditions during the talks. Canada Post confirming customers will experience delays because of the walkout. Mail and parcels won't be delivered and some post offices will be closed. Well, CTV's Scott Hurst is joining me now for more. Scott, what more can you tell us about this strike?
Good morning, Ella. The two sides have actually been at the bargaining table for nearly a year, but as you mentioned, according to the union, little progress has been made, even particularly this week, as the threat of a strike had been hanging over negotiations, saying they expected more in terms of meeting their demands, and the union believes its demands are reasonable, including improved wages in line with inflation, job security, safe working conditions, and improved rights for temporary employees, to name a few of the main sticking points. The two sides have been at it for quite some time. Now, unionized workers, 55,000 strong, are on strike across the country. When mail service is relied on by many, much more during the holiday season, with the union saying Canada Post had the opportunity to prevent this strike, but it has refused to negotiate real solutions to the issues postal workers face every day. From its perspective, Canada Post is saying the national strike will now affect millions of Canadians and businesses, saying customers should expect delays. Mail and parcels will not be processed or delivered for the duration of the strike, and some post offices will be closed. No new items will be accepted until the disruption is over. The other question is...
All right, so just so everyone knows, when you purchase a sticker package, or like most of the merch that I have on my website, it's through Canada Post. And so I've been just going off on the emails. And there's been a lot of you saying, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? I ship everything out. I copy and paste every single detail that on the shipping label that people put in for their shipping address when they make sticker and merch orders. And so if there are delays, I absolutely apologize. Just get in touch with me via email and have your like info ready, and we'll absolutely find we'll find a resolution. Because this isn't the first time that Canada Post has had these types of delays. And to be honest, man, it's like they're going out of business. They're draining Canadian taxpayers millions, billions of dollars, and this is what we get in return. Like crap mail, crap strikes. I get it. I get the need for businesses and employees to go on strike and stuff like that. But dude, right before the holidays, like that's insane. That's bananas.
What about Ottawa? Does Ottawa have any plans to step into this strike? We've heard from Labour Minister Stephen McKinnon. He's been reluctant to step into the strike, but we are learning that the feds are sending additional resources to the bargaining table to assist with federal mediators. So, Ella, in the meantime, 55,000 workers are on strike, and this is affecting mail service for many Canadians and businesses.
Yeah, Scott, you mentioned that it's the holiday season. Of course, Black Friday is also coming up. Just talk to us about the potential impact on individuals and businesses as well.
Yeah, there's a potential impact here for shoppers, for consumers, because as you mentioned, the busy holiday shopping season when a lot of people want to send mail and parcels around the country and beyond, but in particularly small businesses and particularly those in more rural areas where there are few other options to send mail and parcels. And we've heard from the Canadian Federation of Independent concern and disappointment by the potential for yet another work stoppage impacting small businesses. And from the CFIB, they're saying 3/4, about 75% of small firms will be negatively affected by a work stoppage. So the two sides, with the union trying to get better wages and other demands, and Canada Post had been highlighting its poor financial situation, all of those issues looming over talks this week. Now we're learning that a lot of small businesses, charities as well, we've heard from charities this week concerned about mail-in donations. So a lot of people impacted here, Ella, by this strike that began at 12:01, right at the strike of midnight last night into early this morning, with 55,000 postal workers now off the job.
All right, CTV's Scott Hurst will be watching this throughout the day, as I'm sure you will be.
Oh my goodness. So now let's take a look at a couple other videos, different angles highlighting just how severe this really is. Here we go.
Let's bring in John Hamilton, the Canada Post spokesperson. John, thanks very much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Roger.
So you heard what the union has said. You heard what the Labour Minister has said. How did you not manage to find a solution between you and the union? What's the main sticking block after a year?
Well, it's not for lack of talking. We've been talking for the last year. They've been good, we thought, productive discussions. We've been putting forward a plan that would add flexibility to our delivery model so that we can compete in the parcel business and offer affordable weekend delivery, and offering fair wage hikes, plus protecting the defined benefit pension plan and job security provisions for our people. So our current employees would gain and not lose. But obviously, we're not in a position to just throw money at the problem. We need to work together, but we have not been able to get an agreement. And unfortunately, and it's been very disappointing that the CUPW decided to have a national strike, because that doesn't just impact Canada Post, it impacts our employees, it impacts charities, it impacts small businesses. This is the busy time of year, and it impacts remote northern communities that rely on Canada Post 100%.
I got to give him a massive props, though, for going on CTV and actually showing his side of the story and why there hasn't been a resolution. Like, I understand this is like super inconvenient for a lot of people, but at least it's transparent, right? At least he's on the media and he's given his side of the story, and the government and the other side of the story has already been explained. We're going to take a look at the Labour Minister and what he has to say here right after this clip. But this is very, very different from that. what is it, PSAC strike that happened earlier this year. It was like the largest strike in Canadian history, where you had this like radical, woke, crazy left-wing person that was leading the charge. And that individual, I can't even say he because freaking pronouns or whatever, but that individual, when I don't believe did any mainstream media interviews. I think that that individual just like stood in front of Parliament or wherever, and now that person is going to like pro-Palestine protests. That's what I mean by radical extremists, right? Like you represent a union and now you're picking a side. Like it's bizarre. So at least this is, very inconvenient, yes, but at least there's transparency. And that's just what Canadians want. They just want transparency. That's all we want when it comes to our government, when it comes to taxes, when it comes to stuff like this, disputes that are, going on, like debates to find a resolution. We just want transparency. And that's what's going to help heal Canada, right? And the West, in my own personal opinion.
Now, the gap between what you're offering for wages and what the union wants, I think it's 20 and 12%. Are those the two numbers, if I remember correctly? Is there a possibility to find a solution with that?
Well, I believe they're in about the 25% range, 24%. We're at 11.5%, 5% in the first year, which is above current inflation levels. And you have to remember, our employees have within their collective agreement cost of living allowances. Those are payments that trigger automatically based on inflation at any given time, and those have triggered in the last while. So, certainly understand that inflation has been high. That also impacts the business. So, what we put forward is what we think is fair and reasonable. We'll continue to talk, but there's only a limited amount that we can provide and can afford in the next 4 years and beyond, because this is about our future. We're at a point where mail volumes have declined almost 70% in the last 20 years. We have lost 40% of our market share in the parcel business because we can't compete. Everything's going the wrong way, and we need to make changes. The change is broader than the collective agreement, but it's got to start with a delivery model that allows us to compete and grow our parcel business.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the strike right now. Is anything moving at all?
There is essentially a close sign at our facilities right across the country because CKED has decided to take a national strike. We said we would continue operating even if they did rotating strikes, but they've essentially taken all workers off the job. You might find some post offices within a Shoppers Drug Mart or a Jean Coutu that are still open because we don't own those, but they're not accepting any products. So all revenue, all parcels, all everything is shut down, and we're out of the game until we can get things back going again.
And how long can this strike drag on for you or go on for you? You're losing business to FedEx, things like that. How long can this go on before it's damaging, so damaging that it's hard to come back from?
Every day is a huge step backwards, and we did not need to be making steps backwards. We've lost $3 billion over the last 5 years. Our proposals were steps forward where we could grow the business together. Unfortunately, CKED still has a long list of demands that add costs and rigidity to our system that if we could grow the business together, we could look at. But the reality is, and I think Canadians look at that and say, that doesn't seem affordable for the Postal Service right now, and that's where we're at. So we're going to continue to talk, and there needs to be a deal, but every day is an absolute killer because this is our busiest time of year. So many people depend on us, but this is the time we make our money too, and right now we're making zero. Would you like to see the federal government step in? No, we believe there's a deal on the table. Obviously, it's challenging, but we would much rather negotiate a new collective agreement that allows us to both work forward together. But we've got our work cut out for us. Okay, John, thank you very much for joining us today.
I mean, that's fair. That's fair, right? They want to make sure that they're making money, and the government is not really doing a good job of finding a resolution and being the mediator. And to just back up that claim, let's take a look at the Labour Minister and what he has to say.
In the case of Canada Post, I have been following this, of course, very closely. We can only send out our regrets for the uncertainty that this causes, of course, the uncertainty for Canada Post employees and their families. I would characterize these negotiations as extremely difficult. There are many big issues to solve at the table, and not a lot of progress has been made on those big issues. We have, as Minister of Labour, my job is to facilitate the conclusion of a collective agreement, and I've of course asked and directed that all of the resources of our department be dedicated and devoted to helping the parties achieve an agreement at the table. I'm not looking at any other solution other than negotiation right now. Every day is a new day in collective bargaining, and we are going to continue to support the parties in any way we can and make sure that they are able to try and get a negotiated agreement.
Okay. Well, there you go. Hopefully they find some form of agreement sooner than later, because again, they're going to go out of business 100% if they don't get back to work and get back to delivering parcels and get back to being Canada Post, full functioning Canada Post before these holidays. I think like the general public is going to boycott Canada Post. People are just going to be fed up. And I understand. I absolutely understand that they deserve the right to get paid appropriately. And it's very important to find that right balance. But I mean, if they miss this peak season, other postal companies are just going to take over, and it won't be good for Canada Post. But again, that's my own personal opinion. I would absolutely love to know yours. Personally, I haven't really had that big of a problem with Canada Post. Like I said, a lot of the majority of how I send out merch and stickers is through Canada Post, and it's been like quite successful with very, very little hiccups. But I know other people, other small businesses, they do have kind of a bit of a different experience with Canada Post. Actually, let me know down in the comments what you guys think of Canada Post. Are you pro it? Are you against it? The government subsidized aspect, I obviously am like very much against that. I think that companies should be independent from government, and when the government gets involved in pretty much anything, it ends up 100% being screwed. And speaking of screwed, let's take a look at the man who is raw dogging 41 plus million Canadians, Justin Trudeau, and his experience with Trump. Here we go.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau appeared to make it work with Donald Trump. He avoided a prolonged tariff war, and he signed a new trade deal. That experience makes him a valuable commodity now at the two summits of world leaders Trudeau will attend over the next week.
My guess is that many other countries' leaders are going to be asking Trudeau about how he managed the Trump administration the first time around.
Senior Canadian government officials confirmed as much in a background briefing this week, telling reporters, quote, absolutely, Donald Trump's election will change some of the conversations. Canadian officials expect world leaders will focus on Trump's promises, on tariffs, on the war in Ukraine, NATO, and global security. U.S. President Joe Biden will attend both summits, but a representative of the Trump administration will also be there taking notes. For Trudeau, these will be his 10th consecutive APEC and G20 summits. Only China's Xi Jinping has been around both summit tables longer. Some of the first-timers include Mexico's Claudia Sheinbaum, British PM Keir Starmer, and new Japanese PM Shigeru Ishiba. All countries that have typically enjoyed strong relations with Canada.
It's important for Canada at this moment to be talking, not just for the Prime Minister to meet the President of Mexico for the first time, but to reconnect with European allies, to reconnect with Japan and South Korea and Australia and others, because we're going to have to work together in the coming years.
And Trudeau will use time over the next week at these two summits to help shape the agenda for the next major global summit. That would be the G7, to be held next summer in Alberta. Justin Trudeau will be the host, and Donald Trump himself is expected to be one of the guests. David Aiken, Global News, Ottawa.
I cannot wait for Donald Trump to meet Justin Trudeau again. I think that is going to be phenomenal. And Trudeau is going to try and puff up his chest and flap out his wings like he's some sort of peacock. But for some reason, the P is missing and he's just a big cock, or other known as a dickhead. And Trump is going to very, very much embarrass him. And I'm just extremely excited. Trump has been talking a lot of smack about him. In fact, right before the election, within like 30 to 45 days before the big American election that just happened, you had Trump went on, I think it was Aiden Ross's live stream or podcast, or maybe it was the Nelk Boys, and he literally said, I don't know, Justin Trudeau kind of looks like Fidel Castro. That's what they're saying over there in Canada. We're just going to have to wait and see, right? It's like absolutely hilarious. Anyways, moving on to the point I made in the opening of this video, how the media is absolutely full of shit and they are just going to go bankrupt for all of these insane lies. We're going to take a look at this video here, because in this video, the media is trying to say why RFK Jr. is so polarizing and how he's bad for America, which is craziness. He's the most fit U.S. health secretary. Like, literally, the guy is perfect for this position. In fact, I've gone out and said that Trump is building the Avengers to fix America, and it's phenomenal.
Washington Bureau Chief Jackson Prosco is with me. Jackson, Trump said in his victory speech that RFK Jr. is going to help make America healthy again. If he is confirmed as head of the Department of Health and Human Services, what would he actually be in charge of, and what's the reaction?
Well, Donna, the Secretary of Health and Human Services oversees 11 different agencies, including the Food and Drug Administration, the Centers for Disease Control, and the National Institutes of Health. Now, Kennedy is a highly controversial pick here because of his well-documented history of spreading conspiracy theories. And let's run through some of them. He has falsely claimed that vaccines cause autism, that antidepressants are to blame for school shootings, that chemicals are making children transgender, and on that list goes. And the thing is that Kennedy is not the only controversial nominee put forward by Trump. Here in Washington, there's another fight brewing over his choice for Attorney General. Weeks before he moves into the White House, Donald Trump has made clear he plans to keep one major promise: revenge.
Based on what they've done, I would have every right to go after them.
Nominating Matt Gaetz as Attorney General is part of Trump's plan to use the wheels of government to go after his enemies and potentially gut the agencies that once prosecuted his conduct.
Maybe I should serve as Attorney General of the United States. If necessary, I'd fire every little kicker at the J. Edgar Hoover building.
But Gaetz isn't going over well with the senators who need to confirm him. Not just because of his inexperience, but because he's embroiled in allegations of drug use and sexual misconduct with minors, previously investigated by the agency he's now supposed to lead.
I just think it's silly.
I can name between 5 and 10 Republicans who are seriously considering voting against this nomination.
Things got worse after Gaetz suddenly resigned his seat just 2 days before lawmakers were set to release a damaging ethics report.
This information could be relevant to the question of Mr. Gaetz' confirmation.
Even if not Gaetz, Trump has made crystal clear his expectations for the next Attorney General, a job he considers among the most important in his cabinet. Rattling nerves inside the Justice Department, where staff are used to changing administrations, but also working within the bounds of the law.
I think people are thinking about how they could find a rewarding way to continue to protect and serve the American people, while at the same time preserving the essential part of the department.
Trump's nominees for Director of National Intelligence and Defense Secretary are also highly controversial. Add Kennedy into that mix, and you get the impression that Trump is simply trying to shock and overwhelm the system, and more controversial picks are still all but assured. Donna?
Jackson Prosco in Washington, thanks.
More controversial picks. You have actual people that are like Trump's VP, J.D. Vance, has actual combat experience. He's a total badass. Tulsi Gabbard, she is a total badass. You have actual badasses with real life experience that are in those positions, and Trump has brought in Democrats and independent people. RFK Jr. was a Democrat, then he went independent. Tulsi was a Democrat, ran in Democratic nominations, and now she's working with the Trump administration. Like, this is insane. This is groundbreaking news. So the media they're on the wrong side of history, because in 10, 15, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years from now, we're going to be looking back at this was the most pivotal moment in Western culture, Western society. And literally, it's going to, hopefully, if everything goes like pretty smoothly, this is going to be a massive game changer for worlds. Like our world, we're going to colonize Mars, and Trump wants to protect Elon Musk, whereas Joe Biden wanted to get rid of Elon Musk. Like, it's just absolutely phenomenal, and I'm so excited. I'm so happy and excited that I could get in a car by myself, turn my phone on, and scream like the radicals. I'm just kidding. I wouldn't do that, but nonetheless, let's take a look here at fart smelling face Freeland. We took a look at this a little bit earlier, but for those that missed it, we're just gonna glaze over it quickly.
I don't think it should be any surprise. The reality is that our government, and indeed many Canadians, have views that are different from the views of many members of the incoming Trump administration. That in no way needs to, nor will it impede having a practical, respectful, and effective relationship between the two countries. And we know that's the case because that was the case in the past. Today, that is more true than ever because the economic relationship between Canada and the United States is today governed by a trade agreement that was negotiated by President Trump himself. The fact is, the economic fundamentals of the relationship between our two countries are strong, and that means that it is absolutely possible and indeed necessary for both our governments to work together practically, effectively, in the interests of people on both sides of the border.
On the border, we're hearing concerns from the incoming U.S. border czar in terms of him describing it as an extreme national security vulnerability. What's your government's plan to respond to those concerns, and do they involve more law enforcement at the border?
We take the border very, very seriously, and that's why the border was the first issue that we discussed at this meeting of the Canada-U.S. Cabinet Committee. Minister LeBlanc spoke at length. Minister Miller spoke at length. The head of the RCMP was present as well and talked about actions he is taking, as was the head of the CBSA. So we take the border very, very seriously. It is important, first and foremost, for the security of Canada and Canadians, for our border to be secure, to be controlled. And I think it's absolutely legitimate for our American neighbors to want to work collaboratively and effectively with us and to want to know that we take border security seriously, which we do.
Are there plans to staff up law enforcement as a result?
We absolutely are working very, very hard to ensure our border is secure. It's an issue, first of all, for Canadians, and we think that today we really need to be sure that Canadians have confidence, that Canadians control our own border. Of course, it means we need to have the appropriate resources to do that, and we will.
Just on the union representing the CBSA says they're up to 3,000 officers short to patrol the border properly at this time, should there be this influx of migrants that Donald Trump has essentially promised at this point. So does that mean you're going to meet their asks when you say you're going to increase resources?
Okay, there were very many hypotheticals embedded in that question. So let me simply say, we take border security absolutely seriously. It is, first of all, a priority for Canadians, and it is an absolutely legitimate priority for Canadians, and we will ensure that Canada's borders are secure and that we have the necessary resources to ensure that they're secure.
Are you suggesting
from the CUSMA agreement or negotiating a new agreement just with the U.S. I wonder what you make of that, given that Canada and the U.S. definitely share more labor and environmental standards than we do with Mexico.
Thank you for the question. I want to start with what I think is fundamental about our trading relationship with the United States, and that is that it is governed by the USMCA, the new trade agreement that was negotiated by President Trump and by Ambassador Lighthizer. That agreement really means that Canada is on a better and stronger footing vis-a-vis the United States than we were with the first Trump administration. And you're right to point to the labor standards embedded for the first time in the USMCA that were an area of really meaningful Canada-US collaboration, and I think make the agreement stronger and better for both countries. Since we did that deal, a meaningful thing has happened in Canada, and that is we have toughened our position on China. And we've been doing that systematically for some time. We've been very thoughtful about ensuring that Canada controls strategic resources and strategic supply chains within our own country. And over the past few months, we have put in place significant tariffs of 100% on Chinese EVs and of 25% on Chinese steel and aluminum. We did that because it's the right thing to do, because we recognize that Chinese overcapacity, China's intentional policy of overcapacity, is a threat to Canadian workers and Canadian industries. It also makes us the only country in the world which is fully aligned with the United States today when it comes to economic policy vis-a-vis China. And that speaks to the fact that our fundamental economic interests are so aligned. Now, I have been hearing for some time from people close to the incoming Trump administration, but also from other American business leaders, and indeed from members of the outgoing Biden administration, some concerns that Mexico is not acting the way that Canada and the US are when it comes to its economic relationship with China. And I do have some sympathy with those concerns we've heard from our American counterparts.
What makes you think that the American administration...
Yeah, I don't think that they are prepared. I feel like she's just trying to gaslight us. And I mean, her facial expressions say everything. Also, she is wearing, look, hey, to all their own, right? To all their own. But she is wearing a lot of makeup for a press conference. And it's like weirdly inconsistent with Freeland. If you've ever seen her in Parliament, her hair, it's like she just woke up and from bed, right? Like literally just put clothes on and showed up to work, which, hey, to be honest, that's how like 99% of dudes go about life, right? Like we just wake up and put a shirt on and put pants on and there you go, off to the races. And then sometimes when she gives a press conference, usually about interest rates, right, going down, she lately at least, she puts on, you know, this whole like makeup and hair stuff. And then for this one, she did the same thing. I feel like she's just very inconsistent and not trustworthy. And I am very excited for Freeland to no longer be in government and for us to have other people that are way more competent, because even when she's answering questions, she like gives a lot of non-answers. She beats around the bush. And then, I mean, she didn't really do it this time, but in other press conferences, when she answers questions from reporters, she just takes every question and uses that to like knock the Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre. 9 years of being in power, 9 years of being in power, and they still blame Harper. Like it's just craziness. But anyways, that's a different story for a different day. This is where we're going to end the video, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to drop a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't yet already. And then click the little bell notification so you can actually be notified of upcoming videos. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.